Welcome back to another episode of Harmonious at Lunch, the show that fuels your business success. I'm Brandon Gano, your host and guide through the world of harmonious business growth. Today, we're unlocking powerful strategies with industry experts to help your business thrive. If you're a business owner, entrepreneur, or executive, you are in the right place. Join me and our incredible guests today on the journey to clarity, growth, and success. It is time to revolutionize your approach to business. Let's dive in with another episode of Harmonious at Lunch. Welcome back to some more bite-sized business advice. We got an episode today, a topic that you've probably never heard of. I've never heard of. I'm super excited to dive into it, but we're talking about visual storytelling. More than that, we're going to make your PowerPoints pretty. And maybe I've completely oversimplified that. I couldn't be more excited about this topic, though, mostly because our guest is jacked up and full of energy, too, which I love. So, Emily Schneider, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you, Brandon. You did not simplify it. That's exactly it. Just needs to be more simple. That's the goal. That's actually one of the best tips I give is simple.
Okay, then we should wrap up, right? Are we done?
Yeah, we're done.
Was that it?
Thanks for having me. Yeah, everybody need help? Just simplify. Yeah.
I love it. So I did make it simple. We're making PowerPoints pretty, but give me a sense of what do you really do? Because it's much more than that.
Yeah, totally. So I describe myself as a visual storyteller and I specialize in PowerPoint design. I have a magical knack of simplifying complex information to help really articulate and resonate what the story or what is being shared with the audience appropriately to create that right connection, conversation, trust, accountability, all the things we wish for, especially in business sales and conversations, so that in the end, the person sharing the update or that information has their audience captivated, engaged, and is ready to make an informed and impactful business decision. It comes down, yes, to simplicity and consistency with our PowerPoints. We love connecting with people, but we're not always sure how and what's the best way to tell our stories. And I come in as like a little secret person on in your tool belt, and I'll help you articulate that and build that presentation to just have more impact and really resonate better and also be visually stunning. It's so much fun to design something that lets our brains and our minds, listen more intently with the stories being told.
Yeah, so I mean, we've all seen those really good PowerPoints that just have paragraphs upon paragraphs on the screen, and I think that's what we're talking about here. So before you give us the tips on how many words or paragraphs should be on the screen, I'm curious because this is something that I told you before we started recording. I never thought of that someone could specialize in this. I never even thought it was a thing, and that's why I'm so excited to learn about it. How did you first come upon, designing simple but effective PowerPoints? Where did you realize that this was needed?
Yeah, so I grew up, and I should use the term air quotes. I grew up in the marketing and advertising industry. So I worked in agencies for about 15 years, 20 years. And I always loved anytime we did work, we needed to present it. And I always loved being part of building that presentation for our clients. And what I found was that when you have a container or a box and you can really highlight what you want to show within that slide, let's say that's our container, it allows them to make the decision that you want. You're guiding them on the journey. And so I found it useful. I started geeking out about it. I loved the simplicity of what that brought. And I just started realizing that is the things that I love doing. And even more so, I love the way my clients responded when I hit the mark. And so I had a friend who reached out, is really how it started, and said, hey, this startup needs your help. They're a bunch of data scientists and they don't know how to tell their story. They need you. And it was that first kind of freelance project outside of the agency that I was like, oh, this is really fun. It's a little different. And I just started tapping into that more, sharing it a little bit. 5 years ago, I went on my own. I got a little bit of projects like this. And again, through self-discovery and just always being curious and wanting to learn and doing the things that make me happy is what, I produce the best results. I tapped into this and I found that there's actually a whole community of PowerPoint designers. I'm now part of them. And the ability to help other people gain more confidence is so much fun for me. And to do it in a space that people aren't used to is even more empowering. So I love sharing that and spreading that joy.
Goes to show you there's a community for everything, right? Who knew
Yeah.
there's a community of PowerPoint designers?
Yeah.
But something I found interesting in the way you described it is it's not just a PowerPoint. It's not just slides with information. You say you're telling a story, and you were helping that first company tell their story through slides, through PowerPoints. So I think the more important question is not like what's the best way to design a PowerPoint, is how should we be thinking about PowerPoint versus storytelling, and what is the real structure underneath that we should ultimately be thinking about?
Yeah, that's a super great question and something that like we continuously learn and improve on. But my strategy or my approach, right, is PowerPoint is a tool. It is a platform that we use to tell our story. It is not the thing that tells our story. We have to build our story. We have to craft it. Um, I break it down, and my strategy comes to four simple parts. So it's about understanding your audience, it's writing your story, it's the visual design, and then it's also the delivery. I'm going to be super honest. My strength and where I focus is not in the the audience, like defining who your audience is, and also like I don't coach on delivery, right? My sweet spot is really in taking a an outline or a rough PowerPoint, to your point, to your startup point of like this, like people will build and put all their information in. I come in and I help refine that story and that narrative, and then I elevate it or simplify it with visual tips or visual cues. Because when we can be intentional and strategic in how we tell the story that we've outlined, it lets us level that up. It lets us elevate that experience. And again, simple, it creates that simple and consistent execution, which allows our brains to digest information. Um, I think it's also really interesting when you think about it that our brain, we're 65% more likely to retain information when it's visually designed than when it's 10 to 20% is just when it's copy alone. So that data for me is so powerful because it shows how a little bit of intentionality and strategy with your design within your story can really connect better with your audience. Again, simple is always the best way to approach it. So I come in, like I said, I help people craft or refine their story. And then within that, we start to add in those visual design cues that really help to bring that to a next level.
So explain that for me. When you say visual, is that like pictures and funny gifs and memes, or are we talking as simple as like a chart?
Both, all of the above. So the way I break down visual design is in three parts. So you have slide intention, you have your text or copy, and then you have your like visuals and images, right? So each slide should have its own intention, but there's also, you're looking at it from a holistic view and an individual view. But when you think about slide intention, you want to really focus on simplicity, emphasizing those key details. I go down to like 2 to 3 things at the most per slide that you want somebody to take away. And then it's also balancing what your content and your visuals are. Um, and so when you start to think about, well, what does that mean? What are the content and visuals? So content is, again, right, enhancing your headlines, less text, keeping things in digestible nuggets. Bullets and headlines shouldn't be paragraphs. They should be short. They should articulate what you're saying and support your voiceover, but they shouldn't be verbatim what you're saying. Again, our brains do not know how to digest information like that. You're going to get your audience, their wheels are going to be spinning somewhere else, and you've lost them on that journey. When you can keep your information concise, to the point, and really focus on what you want them to take away that supports what the bigger story you're sharing, it allows them to stay engaged. And then focusing attention, and that can come in, that kind of can straddle the line of visual and content, because focusing attention with your content can be bolding. It can be using color. Visuals don't always have to be gifs and memes and the idea of like some picture. Charts, data, color blocking, breaking up space. Those are all ways that we allow ourselves to read and digest information. And it allows us to connect and listen to what the speaker is saying. So, using the same colors aligned throughout a presentation, so that when you talk about a topic, that same color starts to resonate, right? Our brain remembers that, oh, they're talking about that subject. They're talking about that quarter. Oh, I get it. Less is more with data. Share a data point, but like sometimes the audience doesn't need every plot against that chart. They only need the beginning or the end. Sometimes they just need the end number, highlighting that, articulating that. So copy can be part of design, but the balance is important, and just making sure that, again, it all comes back to what is your key takeaway, or overall, what do I want my audience to digest, and how do I break that down per slide, so that you can really lead that conversation. And I like to help my clients be the conversation conductors, so that they can, lay the beats, create the orchestra, have things come in and out as needed, and your audience can really interpret it and digest it as you wish.
And I think that's super important too, is leading the conversation and designing the story path, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Sure, love it.
So what is I'm curious how you go about structuring that, or do you leave it up to the client to say, the audience best, because you said that's not really your specialty, but is there like a story structure? We've all heard of probably Story Brand from Donald Miller. Is there a path you like presentations to follow to really set up the stakes and then build up to where you're going to in the end, the ask for the investment, or the yes or no to the project? How do you go about designing that structure?
Yeah. So I it's like the rule of 4 is how I apply it. But so that you start with the end in mind, and then you go through a sequential beginning, middle, and end, right? The end, when you start with the end in mind, you're beginning with your main update. You're informing your audience of why you're here. You're engaging them, and you're drawing them in, so that because people want to know why they're there. They don't want to just be shared information and not know where they're trying to get to, right? Like, we want to have that destination sort of in our heads. Beginning, right? You start at the beginning, you set the scene, you explain what you're doing, why you're there a little bit more. You get into updates of what they've heard from before. So you're laying the groundwork, so that then when the middle is really like that, the guts or the heart of it all, right? You're really detailing the decision that you need. You're informing them of those updates, of the journey, the business, where you're at, those kind of information, highlighting progress and those kind of things. And then the end is that, it's that wrapping that package up. It's driving home the impact, reminding them and reinforcing what decision you need, which you've kind of already stated at the beginning, but you wrap it back up. So again, our brains are used to this storytelling sequence. We don't need to change it. We just need to help redefine it. But what I think is important is, while I don't focus in on necessarily audience, I definitely am, and it's part of my discovery calls and kickoffs are understanding the audience, who they're talking to, what their purpose is, what action they're trying what action they would like their audience to get, or to make, identifying what their audience needs to know and why, and also understanding how their audience makes decisions. I have a one pager on my website where I break down my strategy, or how I approach things, in a very sequential way. And audience is the first thing, because we need to understand the audience, even if you can't, even I'm not going to help define it, but like, my clients always know who they're talking to, why they're talking to them, based on where they are. And sometimes it's also what level they are within an organization. It's also important to know how much detail to give them. And so these things all inform how and what your story is, and how that narrative comes to life. Once you have that right, then you go into like, okay, I've got my story written. I'm starting with the end in mind. I'm building the middle, or the beginning, the middle, the end. Now I can really go in and talk about, what do I need to highlight within all these sections? How can I streamline this content? How can I simplify it? How do I lead that conversation? And then when you have those 3 parts kind of all built together, then your delivery becomes such a better and a more engaged experience. You have less narration, you have stronger connection. You're talking with people, not at people. You allow that to be conversations, which again, in the end, a good meeting is about having dialogue. It's not just speaking at people and kind of, letting them listen. You want to be challenged, and you want to have those, that their input too, to make sure they're on track. Creating a greater impact is all part of delivery. But when you give yourself time to plan and work through that presentation, it allows your delivery to be so much stronger. And in the end, again, drive those informed decisions you're really yearning for.
Yeah, and you mentioned your website. I put it on the screen. It's also down in the show notes below, so you can go check out all of those resources. And I feel like the irony can't be missed here. Like, we're talking about PowerPoints without PowerPoints and showing examples. It's if you're listening to this, it's even more ironic, I think. But it's so powerful to see the examples of what you have, even just on your website, of really what simplicity looks like in a PowerPoint. And I'm also wondering, how do you decide when to slide or not to slide, so to speak, right? Like when when do you utilize the tool of a PowerPoint versus just skipping it? Because I think a lot of people get caught up in, creating slides for just like a 3 to 5 minute stand-up meeting. How do you help your clients identify like if they need it or not at all?
Usually my clients have already identified that, but I'll tell you what the goal of a PowerPoint should not be that you can send it like you should be my goal when I help clients, I should rather say, is that I want them to have it as a support tool. So it's becomes their background to reinforce what their story is. Like you said before, when you throw everything in the kitchen sink on a slide, there's also the term death by PowerPoint. Like I'm reading along. I'm like somewhere else. I'm overwhelmed. I shut down. I'm out of this. Right. My brain is creating a different story because I don't want to pay attention. When you can have your voiceover or your story be supported by visuals, you're way more likely to retain it, to remember it, and to stay engaged. And that, like, even a 3-minute conversation, sometimes one quick visual, they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. It has such impact. Again, when you can show where you started and where you are, and you have 2 bar charts, like, that's so impactful as you tell all the details of what you've done from point A to point B. But people see that growth, and they're like, oh, this is interesting. I'm still listening. So there's definitely a time and place. I'm honest. I know that, like, not every presentation, not every conversation can have a customized PowerPoint, part of that. But when you can use the strategies, I believe, that I work with in your own world, you really can elevate that conversation and just have the right conversation. We remember bad PowerPoints. We remember bad presentations. The good ones are what keep us thinking and get us curious. And we don't talk about the little things. We remember the takeaways. So I think that's really important to remember. Again, we remember the visuals. We remember the way a chart looks, and you might not know the numbers, but you're going to know that, like, oh, they had great growth. I'm interested in learning more about this company. Let's say.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, it can be so powerful. And I think the most important question is really, do you prefer PowerPoint or Google Slides? I don't want to offend anybody here.
Yeah, no, I'm a PowerPoint geek for sure. I think there's just, for me as a designer, there's more ability. I have more leverage. Google is catching up quickly, but we're still a little limited in just terms of, like, fine tuning some of the treatments that I love to, kind of bring in as part of my checks. So.
Obviously, that was a stupid question, but I can appreciate the fact that you're a nerd and you can geek out on
Yeah,
which tool you like the best. So
totally.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Emily, no, this has been awesome, and you definitely opened my eyes to how we should be thinking about presentations and PowerPoints in terms of storytelling rather than just slapping words on a slide, which I think most people just do by nature. So I really appreciate that, and thank you for being here. But I love to end these episodes with a question from you to the listener. We believe that powerful questions get powerful answers. So if we are, let's say, in this position where we're a startup, we're seeking a $30 million investment, or we're on a marketing team and we need to change the direction of our marketing. It's a big decision. We need to set up a PowerPoint, a presentation, and make that big ask. When we're starting that journey, what is the powerful question that we need to be asking ourselves so that we know we have the highest likelihood of the yes as the result?
I think the big thing is, like, what do I want my audience to do at the end of this? What do I want them to think, feel, and do? And then I can build my story backwards. Again, starting with the end in mind is always the key.
Awesome. It's the theme of today. So I love that you reiterated that, and take action. Go to Emily's website. All the resources are down there. I really appreciate you being here, Emily. This was awesome.
Oh, it's so much fun. Thank you so much, Brandon, for having me.
For those of you watching, listening, wherever you are, again, resources are in the show notes and description down below, but make sure you subscribe. We want to keep bringing these episodes to you every single day of the week so you can get out of your little business bubble, grow your business, and ultimately have a more harmonious business and life. We'll see you on the next episode of Harmonious at Lunch. Thanks for being here.